I'm Phuc Tran. I am a tattooer, teacher, and newly minted author. I wrote a memoir entitled Sigh Gone, and it's about growing up, as the only refugee family in a small rural town in Pennsylvania in the 70s and 80s. And as you can imagine, that went really smoothly. And my memoir is all about how easy that was. Just kidding. So yeah. Or I guess if you're Vietnamese, I guess my name is Trung Binh Phuc. But yeah.
It's a beautiful name.
Phuc. It's cool too. Thanks.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world. What does it mean to be Vietnamese to you nowadays?
Oh man. So I'm gonna wait. Let's wait. I have an answer. But I think I kind of want to wait until later in the podcast to answer that. And that way your listeners will at least get past that 2-minute mark in your podcast, because they're going to be like, oh shit, I wonder what Phuc's going to say. So yeah, I would love to answer that. I think I want to wait to answer that. Like, let's give it, I don't know, at least 20 minutes, or at least until I finish this beer.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, whenever you feel like it's appropriate, we'll revisit it. I think it'll come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't know. I mean, I feel like that, like, from our pre-conversation, like I really appreciated talking with you and hearing your reflections on things too. So I hope this can be a continuation of that. Like, I think like those podcasts where it's like Barbara Walters style, where like you're just like peppering me with questions and I'm just kind of trying to like fend them off. I think for me, that's like a lot less interesting than like being in conversation with someone. And like, so I hope it doesn't feel like I'm going to ask you questions, but I'm going to ask you some questions.
I would love it. If you ask me questions, I'm here. I would answer anything you ask me.
All right. That's awesome. Great. That's super. Okay, let's go. Yeah. All right.
There's some U-Haul boxes behind you, and it makes me think about, the move that your parents made from Vietnam when they arrived here in the U.S. What was it like for them?
Yeah, sure. So, my parents came here to the U.S. in 75. I was born in 73. And so my mother didn't work. My father was a lawyer. And my mother's parents actually worked for the U.S. Embassy in some capacity. I think they worked for like an NGO, but I think just for simplicity's sake, I usually just say they worked for the U.S. Embassy. And so they got papers to like get out of Saigon when all that shit went down. And then we ended up at, long story short, we ended up at Fort Indiantown Gap, which I know is where you also ended up. So it was the clearinghouse, right? I mean, there were only 4 places to go. Yeah, so we were all at Fort Indiantown Gap, and then we just kind of like hung out there and waited until we were sponsored by some nice Lutherans in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And so my parents moved there with my grandparents and aunts and uncles. I think there was like, I don't know, like 12 of us or something like that. My grandmother wrote me an email to tell me that I got the number wrong in the book. So, factually, that's like the Vietnamese grandma's way of saying that she read your book. If she sends you the emails like, here's all the shit you got wrong. And it's not like good job. It's just like, dear Phuc, da 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 da. I'm like, damn. All right. Anyway, yeah. So like, I don't know, like 15 of us. I don't know, but why? You tell me how many people were there. We ended up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and that's where we were. I mean, for whatever, 16 years, or longer, actually, for my parents. And we were like the only, Vietnamese people in town. I mean, like other people came and went, like they would show up and then they would kind of like be like, why are, what's going on here? Not a lot. And they would move away.
Right.
But my parents stayed. So that's where I grew up. And then my parents eventually, left Carlisle and discovered Orange County, California. So they kind of like found the mothership of like all the, Viet expats. So like now they live in Orange County, but that is not where I grew up.
Yeah. I have notes in here in my questions is like, if you folks want to know what the rest of the story is like, read the book, right? How you grew up, because it really goes through the journey of your growth during the high school years and your development in Carlisle, which is the way you've written your story is so highly entertaining, but I'm sure a lot of us can resonate within the Vietnamese community and outside of the Vietnamese community as immigrants.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I don't, you tell your story and you just, I think like growing up, I felt like I was always not talking about my story because it just felt like so weird. Like I was like, oh, I'm not going to share my story. Like, especially in high school in the 80s when like all you want to do is fit in. Everyone's trying to fit in. Like, you know and so I really was just like, I'm not going to talk about like refugee shit or like speaking another language at home stuff or any of that. Like it just was like too, it just like felt like it was just like another opportunity for people to be dicks to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't, so I think I really appreciate that. It was like for me, like it's been so affirming and powerful to share the story, and then to have like so many people, not just Viet people, just like gay Mormons in Utah and like wherever else, like people writing and being like like, oh my god, like your story was so resonant. And it's just like, oh, that's so weird, like and delightful, really, ultimately.
Yeah, you're an inspiration to a few artists that I know that I love and
Oh,
respect. Bao Nguyen, Direct
oh, thanks.
Water. A cousin of mine, Joanna Tran.
Yeah, Mao, he hasn't done anything, right? He's such a slacker. Mao, what have you done lately, though? I mean, really, like, how long can you coast off this? I'm totally kidding. I'm not throwing shade at Mao at all. I love you, Mao. Sorry.
We went to the new museum last night for the Academy of Motion Pictures. There's a new beautiful museum in right by Hollywood, and we talked about you. I said, yeah, can't wait to talk to him today. To you today.
Oh, sweet. Well, tell him I said hi, please.
Yeah.
He's like your hiking buddy, right?
Yes. I see him quite often when he's in town. He's traveling all the time and doing
Yeah.
a lot of work, a lot of good work out there.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool.
So, I want to get into this like right away, and then we could talk about some other stuff.
Okay, all right.
So I read your book, right? And then I was like, okay, at the end, you're like, you thank your wife and everything like that. And I'm like, and I have this thing about like, I want to see everybody's family, right? Your grandmother, your father. So I just Google, and then I was like, I don't think I have the right guy. This guy is tatted up. This guy, is tatted up, and I had to spend a good few minutes to make sure that it was like I couldn't register the fact that the way you wrote things in the book, it's just so cerebral, thoughtful, and somebody who I figure like Viet Thanh Nguyen is in academics, and we read a lot, and you talk about that a lot. The only thing that kind of made me go, maybe this is the same guy, is your affiliation with punk rock, right?
Yeah, sure.
But so, can you tell me about your journey into the tattoo business?
Sure. Yeah. And it's I love it. It's what's really funny is like I guess there are some younger, Viet tattooers, and like they made some reference to me as like an OG like Viet tattooer. I was like, oh Jesus, is that like is that what happened? Like, yeah, so it's like, so I mean, like you're in the you're in the punk rock scene, and like everyone's getting tattooed, and I just, it's expensive, or it's not even expensive, it just costs money. And I never had the money to spend on tattoos. So I just didn't get tattooed in high school, but I drew tattoos for friends who like got, so I was like artistic. And so I drew tattoos for friends who got tattoos. I just never did it myself. Also, like there was only one guy in my town who did tattoos. His name was Crazy Luke. He was like in and out of jail. He had like one eye, and like the other eye was like a glass eye. I'm not even making this up.
You can't make this shit up.
No, it's so true. And his name was Crazy Luke. And if you didn't have money, he would tattoo you for an appliance. So like my friend Mark, like one time, like he like took his parents' toaster oven and took it to the tattoo shop and like gave Crazy Luke like a toaster oven, and he tattooed him for the toaster oven. And I just, it's like you're like a poor refugee kid. It's like you're not going to take an appliance from your house to get tattooed. It's like you're going to get like so many ass whoopings because of that. So anyway, I didn't. I was always very interested in tattoos and being tattooed. I just didn't have the money. And then in college, my parents gave me this credit card. It was like an emergency credit card, right? It was like the like Fuchs in trouble and he needs like post bail or whatever. But I discovered that it had like a cash advance function, for like a very high exorbitant, APR rate. But I didn't know. I was just like, oh shit, this is like free money. It's like an ATM machine. So like these like traveling tattoo guys came through Bard College. They were like friends of friends. And so I got, I heard, I was like, oh, there's like these guys, like they're staying in my dorm, they're gonna tattoo people. So like I went to like the, ATM, and like this is like in 1993, I think, or 94. And I like took money out on the cash advance thing, it was like $300 or something, and like got tattooed. So that was so I got tattooed by those guys, and then they came back the next year and I got tattooed by them again. And then in grad school, I would take the bus to New York City and I kept getting tattooed by this one guy, and we became friends. And then eventually he encouraged me to apply for a tattoo apprenticeship at his shop. This was like in the mid 90s, and people, like, you didn't really get heavily tattooed unless you had this plan to like be a tattooer, and I was getting pretty heavily tattooed at that point. And so he was like, oh, you should probably, like, I don't know, like try and be a tattooer. It's like you're into the lifestyle. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know. Yeah, so that's how I like got into tattooing. And that was all while I was also in grad school for Latin. So I was working on my master's degree in Latin, and then I applied for this tattoo apprenticeship in New York City. Yeah.
That's mind-boggling to me.
So yeah, it is. I am the same guy. I don't. Yeah, it's just like that. Thanks, I appreciate that. It's like you don't know how weird it sounds until you have to like say it out loud, and you're just like, yeah, that's super weird. But
So
I don't know.
so how is it different than freehand drawing?
Um, it's you mean the process,
Yeah,
the
like
process of tattooing? I wouldn't say it's that different. I mean, I think, well, I mean, it's like more technical. It's like the actual act of tattooing, but like the drawing piece of it, like the design process and the draw. I mean, like I don't draw on an iPad like these like young kids do nowadays. Like I still draw like on paper, and then like I'll do revisions with like tracing paper and stuff, just because
Mhm.
I'm old and that's just what I do. Um, so it's like you've already got like the design like sort of like nailed down. So by the time like you're making the stencil and like you put it on the person, it's pretty much just like tracing.
Got it. I
Um,
asked that because isn't like when you first start out, doesn't it have to catch up like your skill set? If you're good at drawing and then you start tattooing, it has to catch up the skill. So
a
who would
thousand
let
percent.
you
Yeah.
who would let you train in that?
Yes, for sure, right?
Was my
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. Your question is like, what dumb ass is gonna let your raggedy ass tattoo them? Yeah, so like really good. Well, so you tattoo yourself, right? So like you like just do like a practice tattooing yourself,
Oh,
um and then you tattoo. Well, I mean, you also start out like doing really simple designs, like so designs that like are really hard to fuck up, and even if you do fuck them up, they're easy to fix later. And like and you're tattooing friends, so there's a certain amount of goodwill there, right? So you're just like, so you're like you're like, listen, Kenneth, yo, like we're bros, all right? We go way back, Kenneth. I'm gonna do this tattoo on you. I might fuck it up, but I swear to God, like in 5 years, I'm gonna fix it up. I'm gonna hook it up nice. You with me on this journey? So I have a few people like that, not a lot. Like my brother, my poor brother's got like some starter tats on him that and like now he's like a lawyer and he's just got like these like janky like prison tats.
I have those prison tats.
Oh no.
I've always wanted sleeves, but I stopped like here, like you know,
Yeah.
I've always wanted tats, but here's the
Wait, what stopped you? What stopped you?
this is the yeah, this is so
Mm.
this is what I wanted to really talk about because we as human beings sort of attach meaning to these images, right? But like I have like a tattoo of Vietnam here, and
You mean
what?
like the outline of the
No,
country?
just the word.
Oh,
I'm a basic,
I love it.
I'm a
Wait,
basic bitch.
wait. Can I see it? Can I see it? Let me see it. Yeah, it just says Vietnam.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's amazing. I
So that
love that so much.
so I got it when I was 17. Um, but okay, so what that meant to me at 17 is not what it means to me today. Or sometimes I can't even take. Oh, I just have it in my head. I don't take my shirt off, right?
Mm.
Because it looks like a janky tattoo. It's like faded, and I don't even. I think I was in North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, right outside the Marine base. Had some guy to tattoo it, but the meaning changes so much, and I realized like the pride that I felt when I got that tattoo was not really based on anything other than insecurity.
Mm.
It wasn't, and you don't know these things at the time, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
So as a tattoo artist, and you being all tatted up, has meaning changed for you throughout the years on your body with the ink and the images?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think in fact, I would say that a lot of the tattoos that I get, like the visual aesthetics are more important to me than the meaning.
Mm.
For exactly what you articulated, that the meanings can shift. Like I have like a dragon on my arm. Like I don't know, like what does it mean? I don't know. It's just like a dope looking dragon,
Right.
But I mean, obviously, there's like lots of cultural and philosophical and spiritual connections to it. And if those things shift, like that's okay, because I still have like this like dope looking dragon, if that makes sense,
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I'm not, and I don't want to throw shade on like the Vietnam tattoo, which is just so amazing. But I mean, like I think like the idea of like a word being a visual representation, or a word that is able to shift and grow with you is harder to do. I'm not saying that it can't, but it's more challenging, right? Where so like I have like so I don't have a lot of like I
Meaning.
have like goofy tattoos. I have like images of things that I like. I have like a portrait of my grandfather, like that, like stuff that's like never gonna change. Like I
Right.
love my grandfather and he's dead, so it's like sort of like that's all there is. Like I guess the only thing would change if like I found out that like he wasn't my actual grandfather. Like that would probably change things. So actually, even if I found out he wasn't my grandfather, like he acted like he was my grandfather, so still good. But like yeah. So I think this goes back to like, I mean, if I could circle it back, like I think that like question about like what does it mean to be Vietnamese, right? Like that shifting sense of who you are. And like I thought about it, like I don't know. Like I think part of me is like, is your question like what does it mean to be Vietnamese to me? Or what does it mean to be Vietnamese like
No, to
mm,
you.
to me? I mean, I think it means that I was born in Vietnam and my parents are Vietnamese and I'm Vietnamese American. Uh, uh, and I'm not sure if there's a whole lot more to it. Like I think because I think, we're complicated people. There are many sort of like Venn circles in that sense of identity. And um, I think what's more like when you ask this question, it's like, wow, that's so interesting. And I think the idea of identity is like a social construct, right? Meaning that like everyone's got to agree on what that identity means. And I think that's something that like for a lot of people who grow up here in a non-dominant, race or space, right? Um, the way that you identify yourself isn't necessarily as important as the way other people or
Right.
like the group identifies you. So so in some ways it's like more interesting to me, or I'm more curious about what my being Vietnamese means to other people. Because at the end of the day, like what associations and what people think of Vietnamese people, like other people, aka white people, like what they think of Vietnamese people, like affects me a whole lot more than what I think. Like meaning that I guess all I'm saying is like I could think that like I'm Vietnamese, like I'm the shit, like and then other white people are like, no, you're a piece of shit, and then that's kind of like my reality, no matter what I think.
Yeah.
So I think like we're constantly negotiating how we see ourselves in the world and then how the world actually sees us. And sometimes those things line up, right? Like if you're in dominant spaces and you're part of that dominant culture. So like, white guys, like, sorry, like it's pretty cool for you because like the world sees you how you see yourself. But like I think there's a big disconnect when those things don't line up. Um,
Yeah. Your answer is it's appropriate for a Vietnamese American person living in America for 40 something years. I asked this same question to a millennial from Vietnam, and they're like, what does that even mean to be Vietnamese?
I love it. I love that. Yeah, no, for sure. I felt that the
That
same way.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. So tell me, so millennials from Vietnam were just like, I don't even
Yeah.
know
They're
what
like,
that
whoa,
means.
nobody's ever asked me that. That's a weird question. I've gotten that.
Yeah.
That means, I don't know. That's like asking me, like, what does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
You know?
What does it mean to
Because
have black hair? Like, oh.
it's a homogenous, group of people that there's no, I mean, maybe other than class and, money and socioeconomic positioning, but I mean, they're all, looking the same. They all kind of like float in that same. So there's no sort of juxtaposition yet. But I think in a few years when we start to export, and I'm going to just call it right now, I think we're going to start exporting a lot of our creative juices to the world. I think that sort of I think there's a dragon, or that will awaken in Vietnam, that I think they'll be thinking about it. Hopefully, they will be thinking about it in a different way.
Hmm.
But
What's your answer? I want to hear what your answer is.
okay, I've never been asked that on, so I think I'm very honored that you asked me that. I think that I live and exist in this podcast space to ask that question because I think it's ever changing. The meaning of being Vietnamese changes so often, just like the meaning on the tattoo. Ever since I was old enough to recognize that I wasn't Vietnamese, or I wasn't American, or I wasn't anything, it really, and it still rocks me to this day. So it's an ever changing thing, and it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it'll never make sense because at the end of the day, the more I ask the questions to people and the more I learn about it, it just seems to kind of keep drifting into infinity. The answers that, and then as we're drifting into infinity, what seems to happen is all the answers and all the meanings that Vietnamese people give me, just seems to be, we're all human. We're all just living these unique stories all over the world. But when you start to listen and engage, the special thing about the answer that people give is it's just special and unique to each person that's answering it, because it's such a unique and special thing to that person. And the cumulative effect of it is, it just keeps getting like infinity to me. So it keeps changing. And, I think people from Afghanistan struggle. People from Syria, refugees, struggle. They all go through, if you listen to the stories of the refugees, I mean, they're very similar. And if you listen to a lot of the people's answers from Vietnam, there doesn't seem to be one story or one narrative. It's it they don't. So it changes my, every time I talk to somebody new, I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
You mean it doesn't make any sense in terms of what
What does
you?
it mean to be Vietnamese? What is, like, if I said
Yeah.
Vietnamese was like, you're red and you're yellow, just describing it, or you're something that, but nothing is really sticking in my head, because there's so many different corners of Vietnam, and the
Mm,
culture is so rich that
hmm.
I think the more we dig and the more we ask questions, it's becoming more normalized for me, and not as scary, thinking about, like, I know this does not make any sense, but it seems like all the other answers don't make sense to people too. When they're answering, I'm like, I can't really grasp why it doesn't make sense, other than the fact that we all share unique stories, and we're just humans living on Earth, and we just happen to be called Vietnamese because we come from that
Right.
corner of the world.
Exactly. I mean, my wife just did like the whole like 23andMe and Ancestry.com like DNA thing, and actually I did too. It's like shocker. Yeah, plot twist. I'm like 99.9% Vietnamese. My daughter said, she said it was so funny. Like my daughter is like, so like America's kind of like, she's like, it's not like a real place. And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, well, if you take like a 23andMe test, like you'll never get an answer that's like, oh, you're like 47% American. And I was like, oh shit. Like she's
Wow.
totally, you
That's
know what I mean? Like, yeah, I was like, God, like,
mind
I
blowing.
mean, yeah, it is mind blowing. And it's kind of like, it goes back to that social construct idea. Like we just happen to be born or share the genetics from a certain place in the world where people were together for a long time and like developed certain, sort of genetic, or phenotypical appearances. And I don't know, like, I feel like your question though is so interesting. Thank you for answering that. Like, I think,
Thank you for asking.
no, yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm just because I was a little bit stumped, and um, I feel like the answer is like, what does it mean to be Vietnamese? To me, it's like everything, but also nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing in the sense that like it's so deeply baked into me. I don't even know how I could like untangle that. And also, it seems like a little bit like a to me like what's baked in there. And you can tell me if you feel like this is not true. Is that there's a sense of observing or honoring or recognizing our heritage, and what does that mean? And like that, like for me, that's also tricky, and I think for just because like we come from a nation that was torn apart by civil war, right? So it's like what does that mean? Like I don't really know, a place where like the people turned on themselves and like
Yeah.
killed each other, like literally killed each other.
Doesn't that happen in every culture, every country? There's civil war happening throughout the whole history of mankind. I mean, I don't think there's in the county of LA, there's probably people killing each other within their, block, right? It's a
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
natural occurrence, but I use the name the Vietnamese because it allows us to hear the stories and what people assign meaning to being Vietnamese. But I myself, I think I'm gonna always be searching for that. I don't think I'm
Mhm.
ever gonna stop.
Do you hyphenate? Like, do you identify as like Vietnamese American? Like, is that like sort of?
I never thought about it, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, I I'm okay with if anybody said I'm Vietnamese American. I'm okay calling myself that, but I'm not married to that,
Hmm.
right? I'm
I
not married to that.
I guess for me like that idea, that like I mean it's just like there can be a lot of gatekeeping around like identity and authenticity, right? Like who gets to be like real Vietnamese and who doesn't, and can you write, can you not write, can you read, can you not read,
Yeah,
like like is your dialect like from the north or the south. I mean like all kinds of stuff, like are you on the losing side of the war or the winning side of the war, like so I don't know. I guess I don't feel like, yeah, I don't feel like I have any special claim to like meaning just Vietnamese culture. I mean like I didn't grow up there, like like I speak it very badly, I can't read or write it, so like I feel like I'll hyphenate. And frankly, like I think, someone said to me once, it's like skin folk ain't kinfolk, meaning that like I think like I've met enough Vietnamese people who have really bad politics, and like in a very sort of conventional sense, just like bad politics, meaning that like my politics just don't align with theirs. I guess I don't mean to make value judgment. Their politics are what they are, right?
right.
But they don't align with mine, but they're Vietnamese, and I'm just like, ugh. Like I would much rather, I guess, be aligned with people who have, the same worldview that I do, regardless of where they're from, rather than aligning myself with people who just happen to be from Vietnam, but otherwise are kind of shitty people. I don't, is that's pretty controversial. Okay, bring the tweet hate. Come on. I mean, like, look at January 6th, man. Like that, like where people are like flying the Trump flag and like this, like the South Vietnam flag. I was like, what the, and Viet Thanh Nguyen's like written a ton about that. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, what is that? Like, who are those people? Like, that's not me.
Right.
I don't think that's you. I mean, no, maybe it is you. I don't know. If it is you, I'm super curious. Let's talk about that.
No, but it's not me, but I do. want to hear from that side. I want to understand it. I want to have
A thousand
dialogue.
percent. Absolutely.
I don't want to cut anyone off.
For sure. For sure.
No matter
Yeah.
how bad it gets. You know, I have this thing in my family where I've lost a few people my age because they just don't agree with my politics, and I trace back to the way I talked a decade ago, and it was just so abrasive. And I look back and I
Mm,
regret it. I mean, I won't have these guys again forever. I've lost them. They won't talk to me. These
mm,
are close family members of mine that, because of political differences or socioeconomic sort of like I got educated this way, you didn't. We we no longer talk. So I sort of draw upon those experiences, and it wasn't just one or two guys. It was like a lot of them that don't that won't talk to me anymore, and that's my fault. I
well,
think.
wait, that's a little juicy. Can you like unpack? I mean, we don't have to get all into it, but like, like you guys were just talking politics, and you were just like, I think X, Y, like I think climate change is real, and they were just
Yeah,
like,
but
oh,
it's like
it's like,
condescending, like the way I did it 10 years ago. My
uh,
brother's like that. We both are, the oldest ones in the family, and we'll throw the hammer down with facts and with logic. But it doesn't work that way with these people. It doesn't.
mm, yeah,
It
for sure.
doesn't. And they're family. They're close, and I can't get anybody to call me back. On that side sometimes, and or at all. And
Mm,
nobody's calling my brother back either. In that. And what is that? We've lost. It's fucking computer algorithms that are
yeah,
divisive, right? You
yeah,
really think about it, it's like they probably clicked the one too many times in that direction. I clicked that direction, and
yeah.
my brother, 10 years later, is listening to the Young Turks, and he's like, die hard TYT, and these other guys are, QAnon guys, and so it's now
Mm,
there's no family, there's no family reunions for these two groups of people. And I feel that way with the Vietnamese community and society in at large in America, because in Vietnam they're probably dealing with other divisive things. But yeah, I mean, that's as detailed as if you ask me more
yeah,
questions, I can
yeah.
answer. But
Sure, sure, sure. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I guess and to me it sounds like it's important for you to have a connection with your family, and like that's like a
definitely.
grounding, like it's like a place from which you draw strength, and like it's important to you. So it sounds like it's painful to like lose those people in your life, right? Like,
Failure.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I view it as failure. Yeah, failure on my
Mm.
part, not on their part. They, and just the fact that I was just about to say they don't know any better is condescending. It's just, that's fucked up to even think that. But just being, if I'm being honest, I'm just saying, like, my doors are always open. I want office hours with my family.
Yeah, 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 right.
But
uh,
even me thinking that it's hours is fucked up too. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm,
emotional office hours.
yeah,
Yeah, I had a friend who just used that recently. She's like, I have emotional office hours right now, so just like download, like give spill the tea. That's
yeah.
funny.
You
Yeah,
you teach, right?
yeah, I did for I'm on hiatus right now as of what, yeah, 2019, but I taught for from like 97 to 2019,
Oh
so 20,
shit.
yeah,
What
22 years. Yeah,
you taught for 22 years.
yeah.
What grades? What level?
Almost all of it was like high school Latin with like a little bit of Greek. I taught some college level stuff in there too, but it was mostly high school and mostly Latin with like some random things here and there. Like occasionally I would teach like an English class, and like I taught like Greek sometimes or German sometimes because my minor was in German. But yeah, yeah, yeah. I dug it. I really loved it. My joke was always that I teach for free. I get paid to go to the meetings. So so the stuff I did not dig was like going just like endless meetings, things that could have been emails. And, but I mean, I love working with kids, in a lot of ways. Like um I went to grad school at UMass Amherst specifically to get my master's to teach high school, and it was like really for me like a way to pay homage to like all the great high school teachers that I had who like really like saved my dumb ass, because it wasn't, if it weren't for them, like who knows what would have happened to me. But But
You
yeah.
still keep in touch with any of those teachers?
I didn't. And then when I started working on the book, like I did some research trips and I went back to Carlisle and like I connected with some of them and like that's been like super amazing. Like so there's one English teacher in the book who like really, like grabbed me and like, inspired me. And I had coffee with her and like now we like text. It's very funny, but like sometimes she doesn't text, like she'll just call me, which is like super weird because like nobody calls anybody like unless someone's like died or like there's some real drama. So she'll call and I'll be like oh shit, like what's going on? And she's like, oh, I had this question. And I was like, oh Jesus, like like you could have texted me. Yeah. And she's retired, but like she's like, I mean, she's like, um yeah, it's wild. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Shout out to my 10th grade English teacher. I have breakfast with him once or twice a month.
What, still?
Yeah, still.
Oh my
He
God,
and I
that's
are
amazing.
very tight. I mean, my mentor, Jim Thompson, he
Yeah.
listens to a lot of my podcasts and he's just an amazing human being. I'm for sure wouldn't be here today without his love and his watchful eye and advice. And he and his wife Lois have been part of my life ever since 10th grade.
Yeah, that's amazing. Big ups, Jim Thompson. All right.
Yeah.
Nice job. That's amazing. Well, tell me about like what was there like a yeah, tell me about that relationship. Like what was so
So yeah, so
influential?
okay, so I lived in a really ghetto part of the city in LA, in sort of mid city, South Central LA, and he lived in the neighboring town, Hancock Park. It's a 10-minute drive, but I mean it's clearly like where the mayor lived, right in the heart of it. And then I lived on the other side. So, but we both he taught his first year, and it was my first year as a sophomore. I transferred from a boarding school into this one school that is, I don't know, maybe 25 minutes away from where we lived. It was way on the other side of town. So we started to talk, and we got close, and I started to come over to his house, and I came from a predominantly like white high school my freshman, sophomore, eighth and ninth grade year, and we were used to reading and listening to a lot of rock music and things that the new high school was completely missing. So when I met Jim Thompson, we talked about books, and we were, and I realized he didn't have to work because he did well in New York, and just, his wife was a lawyer at a big firm out in LA, and he had a lot of time to sort of like work with these high school kids. And once I graduated, I graduated really early, and I got recruited by the Marine Corps, and I was at that festival, and I bumped into a recruiter, and he's like, you should join the Marine Corps. And so I went to Jim's house, and I said, and I asked him for his advice, and he said, don't do it. And he called his, Vietnam War friend, a captain, a retired Marine, trying to talk me out of it. And I decided to go anyway. And I went. And then from that point on, I just kept in touch with Jim Thompson, and he helped me a lot with my studies, my college studies, because my brother and I weren't going to go to college. That wasn't our path.
Are you both enlisted, right?
We both enlisted.
Yeah.
And we didn't think about going, we just wasn't, my parents wanted us to be Catholic priests.
Mine too. Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God. Oh,
we're going to get into that in a little bit. Yeah, and so Jim, really helped with the essays and, helped with my writing and really got us along, and we both got into USC because Jim sat with us. And from that point on, I mean, there's so many milestones in my life where Jim basically was my father. I mean, as when all of you folks listen to or read the book, Sigh Gone, my father and your father comes from this generational, I don't know what it is, but I mean, I do know.
Was your dad hard too? Was he a hard guy?
Yeah. He's a hard guy too.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so Jim sort of was the father figure, and, stepped in, and, I still consider him, we talk about this all the time. I'm like, you're way closer to me than my own father was. But I love my father. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
No, but
Yeah, claws and all. I love that. Yeah. And I think that's like the thing is um in some ways like that's like the beauty of the American experience, right? Like I think like I think about like my parents' story and my aunts in particular, and like growing up in Vietnam, it seemed like their stories were already written. Like it was like a very narrow set of paths that they could go down that was like predetermined by society, sort of like money, the war, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in some ways, like I don't know if everyone, I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of tweet hate for this, but like in some ways, like coming to like having everything blown up, like hitting the control alt delete on like your life and coming to the US is kind of like, okay, I guess like we're starting over and like anybody can be anything, and all of a sudden, like, all of my aunts like go to college and become engineers, right? Which they would have never done in Vietnam. That's kind of like awesome. And
I know. I
or
used to
like
say this is like a fucking 30-year vacation, and I used to get a lot of flack for that. I was in my 30s. Go to family dinners, like fuck you guys. It's like, but that means that I did not absorb the trauma of the war. I was born in the United States, so
for
I was
sure.
so naive to people's pain, and I would say that straight to my uncles who were locked up for
That's tough. Yeah.
fucked
Yeah,
up
that's
thing to say.
that's
But
yeah,
now
yeah, yeah, that is.
I'm a repentant. I've repented.
But you know what? I appreciate your passion. Like, yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know if it's a 30-year vacation, but it's certainly it could be an opportunity, right? Like, I think it like you get dealt a hand, and it, like you depends on how you play it. Like I think you could dress up in old military uniform and do that parade and like pretend you're still in the army,
Yeah.
or you could just be like, you know what, I'm going to start over, and like I've always had this dream to do X, Y, and Z. But I think like a big, if I get I mean I've never lived in like the big like Viet community, but I feel like culturally, like I think um like a big blind spot for at least for my family, I'll speak for my family, is like the mental health piece. Like I feel like my family does not deal with like the mental health piece super well, and so I think that keeps us from connecting with each other better. It keeps us from healing, like at least my parents generation.
Yeah, you're a little
um
bitch if you have to talk about that stuff.
yeah, right, it's just like,
Little bitch.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And it's just like, so that is not healthy, right? I mean, like even like, yeah, and like that, yeah, anyway, yeah, we'll leave it at that. So I hope that like our generation, like yours and mine, and like our kids, and and certainly like the kids who are born here, and that they take that self-care, like that they take that mental health stuff more seriously, and like that intergenerational trauma and whatever we like absorb from our parents, like it's not yours to pass down. Like that's not like a family heirloom that you want to like hand off to your kids.
But there is beauty in it, right? There's so much beauty in the scars and the trauma now.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe I don't know, I
You
don't
can
know,
disagree. You can totally disagree with me.
I don't know. I'm curious about that statement. That's my diplomatic way of saying like, that's not something that I would say necessarily,
Would you
but
would
I'm
would
curious
you
about
have
it.
removed those experiences if you were given a choice right now? If I can give you a button to hit control delete and all of that gets wiped out of your, that's an unfair question, but I mean, having gone
Yeah,
through it, would you? Oh, you would.
I would reduce it by 50%. How's that? Like I
Right.
don't think I think yeah, and it was mostly like stuff with my dad. Like I think like like I would delete one or the other, meaning that, and I'll say this, like I think like the two biggest pressures for me were um like like um sort of growing up in like white culture, right? And all that entails, and also having like a shitty home life.
Yeah.
Like I could have done without one or the other, meaning if I had had like a rock solid awesome family, then growing up in like shitty white culture, it's like whatever, like because I got these people have my back, right? Or vice versa. Like you grew up in Vietnam, right, where like you fit into like the larger culture and you have a shitty family. You're like, yeah, what, like I have a shitty family, but at least I like fit in, and like people aren't trying to like beat me up and do dumb shit like that. But like I think like those two things really um made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere for a long time.
Now, here's two privileged dudes sitting and talking about this shit. But if you think about it, there are a lot of mid 40s or late 40s dudes sitting in jail somewhere, Vietnamese guys, right?
Yeah.
Because both those situations, they weren't tough enough to, or whatever. They, no judgment, but they were just not equipped enough to get out,
Or just luck. I mean, I think luck, just being lucky, right? Or unlucky,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I could be dead. I could be in jail. I could have done like the wrong
Yeah.
drugs or whatever. Yeah.
Or joined a gang or
Yeah. I mean, like yeah, right, for sure. 1,000%. Yeah. There are tons of guys
tons of
our
guys in jail.
age.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
You know, I, as a result of going through my parents' journey and how difficult it was, in the back of my mind, I always prepare myself. If I have to if the U.S. blows up and I have to go live in Venezuela or Egypt, I'm ready, man.
Oh my God, that's so funny you say that. It's so funny. I was just talking to someone else about that. Like you're always ready
You're
to just
always
go
ready.
back to zero. And that's cool.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I'll take a shit out in the middle of nowhere with no toilet paper, no nothing. Like, let's rock this,
Yeah. That's I mean, I don't and I guess here's the question, right? Is that a strength? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I would like to think it is, right? Like, yo, Kenneth is like, he's ready to beat like raw dog it, right? Like Kenneth is ready to go. And then I'm just like, oh, like Kenneth is not like he's always in survival mode. He's like when does that turn into like thriving? Right? Like when does he get to feel secure, or when does he feel like he can put down roots or cultivate something?
We talked about that the last time, you and I, the
Yeah.
pre-interview. Yeah.
Mm.
I think I'm still dealing with that. Yeah. Not being able to fully thrive as a result of not feeling like my roots are fully planted, because I don't feel Vietnamese and I don't feel American.
Yeah.
I don't feel any of it sometimes.
So, and not to put you on the spot, but like, have you done any mental health work or counseling or anything like that?
Yeah, I went through therapy for 7 years.
Awesome, good for you. I'm no, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And like I did a fuck ton of therapy too, and I think was it helpful for you?
It was entirely helpful. I think
Yeah.
had I not gone through therapy, I might have, okay, 7 years, I might know myself. If I can quantify it, maybe I know myself 25% better than,
Nice.
if there was 100% to myself, maybe I know 25% now. And if I didn't go through therapy, maybe 0 or 1%.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah, that's net positive.
Net positive, yeah. You're net positive. But it was almost like I had to, because I was dating and I was dating so much, but nothing would stick and land. Nothing. I couldn't figure out why I didn't like people and why people didn't like me, or it just wouldn't work. And then I got too obsessed, or I would sleep with somebody and they would be too clingy. Nothing made sense. It all boiled down to not understanding who I was as a result of just having such a mixed up experience in my family life. And my mom and dad were great, but when you take a step back and you go, wait, that whole like heavy extreme Catholic wanting us to be priests, like that was not healthy. That that really screws up your, that repression screws up your sexual patterns, and it does a lot of weird things to you.
Yeah, for sure. And not being able to talk about it, right? Like,
Right.
or yeah, you know what I mean? It's like the double whammy, right?
Yeah,
Of
you
like,
couldn't talk about it in my family. That like plates would go flying from my dad. Like, what?
yeah,
There's no God.
yeah,
There's no
or
debate.
like, yeah, right. So your dad was like hardcore Catholic as well?
Twice, went to mass in the morning and in the evening.
Damn! Wow.
Twice.
Wow. So my
Twice.
dad was like a converted Buddhist. So my dad was kind of like low key, like he's like, oh, I don't know, God, maybe God, I don't know. So like, yeah, my dad like converted to marry my mother. So my mother is like hardcore Catholic. My mother was actually supposed to be a nun
And
until my dad knocked her up. So there's a
while
little
she was
gossip
in
there.
the
I
knocked her
don't.
what?
Yeah, I don't know what she was doing, like as far as like prepping for like being a nun, like out of like nun school. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But she was gonna be a nun, and then and then she got pregnant, and then they had to get married to avoid the scandal. And then my dad was Buddhist and he converted to Catholicism to marry my mom. Yeah.
Yeah, that Catholicism.
And like third world Catholicism, right? That's like a special brand. That's like extra spicy. It's
But
like that.
but I talk to Bao about this a lot now. Tradition, rituals.
Mm.
They meant absolutely nothing to me growing up. But the older I'm getting, the more the marinade is working.
Oh shit. Oh, tell me about that. Like
Yeah.
what traditions like are like that, and like do you have like a little family altar and things like
I mean
that?
Catholic traditions.
Oh, Catholic tradition. Okay.
and
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and that and all of that stuff too.
yeah.
Yes.
So are you religious? Like do you go to mass now and
No, no.
okay, okay,
It's
okay.
gonna take.
Okay.
No,
It's not that important, but it's getting there. You're like you're not rejecting it out of
no, and I'm embracing clerics. I embrace my baptismal godfather was a priest, and then my what is it, Timsuk? What is that, confirmation?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Confirmation was also a priest, and he
God,
taught at Notre
can I
Dame.
just say, like, it's amazing that you know the Vietnamese word for confirmation. I would have been like, nope, I don't know what that is. Like,
I had to think
you like,
about the Vietnamese first, and then
did you go to Viet school?
yeah, my dad started like 17 of these things. He started 17 chapters of the same thing called Tuni
Oh,
Fatima. So all you Tuni Fatima kids out there, if you're listening,
what is that? Is it just like Viet school? Like you just go
it's
and
like
learn to
Boy
read and write?
Scouts. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Boy Scouts, but it had a mission of there's these three kids that out of, I think if it was Portugal, had an
Yeah. Oh
apparition.
yeah, Fatima. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Fatima,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
these are
yeah.
the youth kids of Fatima. It was a
Oh, no
Vietnamese
way.
in LA, and yeah, at one point they were at 17 different churches, and that part of it was great because we got to meet a lot of girls from all the churches, and my brother and I really, you know, worked on our. We went to all boys school in high school, and so it was a very cool way to kind of meet girls throughout Southern California. So
Sure.
thankfully we had that experience, but.
And so was that kind of a bit of like Boy Scouts with like culture,
Yeah.
like Vietnamese history or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, we would have activities, and we would have like camping once or twice a year. We would do things every weekend, and because my dad was sort of like the founder of that thing, we would go from church to church, talking about the secrets of Fatima and converting yourself so you can be saved, and I don't think,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. Also amazing that you went like camping. I asked my parents to go camping once when I was young, and they were just like, they thought it was like the dumbest thing ever, because like all my white friends were camping, and they're like, we literally try to not be homeless. Like, why do you want to go and be homeless for a weekend? And I was like, I don't know, marshmallows, like, fire. It seems cool. Anyway, that's awesome. Like,
Do you
did you
take your
guys do?
kids? Do you take your kids camping?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't go camping until I was like a grown ass man, like in like
Oh,
my 30s. Like it was like the first time I had ever like slept in a tent or like gone camping. It was bonkers. Like I'm all into it now. Like I'm like
yeah.
super, like my wife is like, Jesus, like we're gonna go camping again. I'm like, yes. Because like I can still count the number of times I've been camping because like I started so late and it's awesome. I love it. Yeah.
I do too. I really do like it. My wife, she's not into it, but I love it. I love camping.
Yeah, amazing. So wait, I had a no, I forgot. It
We
was a
were talking
question.
about the youth church and
Yeah, yeah. Oh, in Viet school. Yeah, and
youth
learning to
school. Yeah.
read and
So
write.
I
Yeah.
learned how to, my dad went through Bible studies with us in Vietnamese every night. We'd
That's super
recite the
hardcore.
rosary, and then we
Yep.
just hit the Bible in Vietnamese. But the cool
Like reading the
reading
Bible in
reading the
Vietnamese.
Bible and then translating, like, what does it mean. But the cool shit was after that we would watch phim trường, which is the kung fu movies on the VHS, and then so there was a lot of language correlation in Vietnamese to these tapes, and we would, so we were able to build this sort of vocabulary, Vietnamese vocabulary, watching these karate films from out of Hong Kong and biblical words. So
Were they dubbed in
they were
Vietnamese?
definitely Vietnamese. Yeah.
Wow. And then like all the Perry by nights, right? Like
My parents weren't into the Paris by Night. They weren't
what?
because they were into a different type of music.
Oh,
There
interesting.
was a music called Tin Ching, so that's
Hmm.
like the wartime music or pre-war, which Paris by Night did have. They
Yeah.
had their share of Tin Chin music, but my parents were like snobs about music. They were into Van Gogh and
Mm,
Jin Gong Sung, and but so those types of composers were not really, you had more Linda Chiang Dai and new wave and more modern
mm.
stuff on Paris by Night. So we didn't really engage with Paris by Night on that level. But we'd go to other people's houses and we'd see Paris by Night on. But
I read this super interesting article recently, and it was, I can send it to you later, or you can, if you post this, we can link it in the comment section. But it was about how like Viet culture and Viet cuisine, specifically the food, is like it's like a time capsule. Like it's like very specifically like 1970 70s Vietnam. And that like because like you have like this huge diaspora, all these people are transplanted here, and then they're the people who are in a position to open up restaurants and open up cafes and stuff are just recreating like the Saigon and like the Vietnam of their memory or their childhood, which is like the 70s. And so it's like there's like a huge gap right between like what modern Vietnam is, not that I've been, I can't say, and what sort of Vietnamese culture here is in the US. And that in the US it's actually this like weird kind of like yeah, this like time capsule. I don't want to call it cosplay, like it feels a little dismissive, but it's like very much like it's dated, you know what I mean, that like the things that people are serving here in like Viet restaurants is not necessarily what like is happening in restaurants in Vietnam right
man,
now.
I
Like, what do you think of that? Isn't
think
that
I have
wild?
to think I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm in the food space. I make my family money
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
on
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I would even argue, I know I'm going to get crucified for this, but
Say it. So it's spicy. Let's say it. Let's say it.
Viet Nguyen always says, what did he say? If both sides aren't like fucking you up, you aren't doing your job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But if if I think about it, the menu in Little Saigon, for example, here in California, um, it's actually very it's very good compared to anywhere else in the world. To me, it's
Hmm.
the best, right? Like, and I go to Vietnam twice, three times a year, and it's just the best to me because it encapsulates what I like from what my mom cooked, and so we go to the restaurants out here, and it's very similar. And then you go back to Vietnam, and you realize there's pockets and there's different restaurants that have upheld that sort of that flavor or that sort of that era, but a lot are moving in so many different directions, just like the culture.
Mhm.
That you're that's a really good point. The time culture, the time capsule aspect of food. But the controversial thing that I was gonna say is, well, maybe because I I lived here predominantly all my life. I think the Vietnamese food here is the best in the world.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And maybe it's not that you're wrong, but maybe it's like and that's like an extension or a reflection of your palate, right? Like if your palate's sort of like calibrated to sort of like SoCal Vietnamese food,
Yeah.
then,
I
yeah,
would say,
that's
with the
fascinating.
exception of like Hủ Tiếu, Hủ Tiếu, there's like these streets in Vietnam that, there's competitive, like there's competition. There's three or four in one little district, and you go there and you cannot beat the flavor of, but that the Hủ Tiếu game in Saigon is out of control.
Yeah.
Out of control. But for the most part, like pho for me, you know, it's really Little Saigon. There's it's just so good. And it
Yeah.
could be the quality of the beef, could be the
Right.
quality of the way they make the noodles, all these things.
And is it, do you know, we're going to go down the rabbit hole here. Do you know if they're if their vendors are sourcing from Vietnam, or if they're like buying, or if they're sourcing from the US. I'm just curious. Like,
The restaurants in Little Saigon?
yeah, 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 yeah.
No, they're, to my knowledge, everybody's buying things from the US.
Okay.
Now, maybe
Yeah.
shrimp is imported to the big distribution companies into big warehouses, and then the restaurants are buying from the distributors, but nobody's like picking up the phone and say, "Can you send me, 100 pounds of beef?" Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. But I mean, like, it's like we also live in like sort of like the richest country in the world. So it's like it would
exactly.
be embarrassing if like, the Viet food game is not, up there, right? Like Blue
It,
Ribbon.
it's the same with Cuban food in Miami too,
Hmm.
because I've been to Cuba a few years ago, and the food there is, how could it be good? The it's
Yeah, the
restricted.
embargoes. Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
same thing. So anybody's going to Cuba and saying the food's amazing, it's not. It's not. It's not amazing. It's the amazing Cuban food. The amazing Cuban food is in Miami, or pockets of SoCal that
And if
like
you have any complete complaints, please tweet at Kenneth Wynn.
I'm
Cuban
making all
food
these
in Miami is where the real Cuban food is. Oh shit. Oh my
I'm
God.
making all
That's
these
great.
general blanket
I
statements
love
that
it.
I
I
normally
love it.
don't.
No, that's great. I love it.
So
Um,
so how old are your kids?
they're 8 and 11. Yep. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so how have you changed the way you parent because as a result of your experience with your dad?
Yeah, I mean, that was like the big, not to sort of like go back to being like a cheerleader for therapy, but let's be honest, like that was finding out that I was going to be a father was really the thing that precipitated my counseling work and like my mental health work was, just recognizing that I didn't want to just parent the opposite of how I was parented.
Mm.
Like that doesn't seem thoughtful. Like that just seems reactionary. And and also like I thought about who I was as a son, and like being a child and being a parent are sides of the same coin. And like I didn't have like a great feeling about being like a son. I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be a dad. I was like, oh, how do I feel about being a son? And I was like, like 1 out of 5 stars would not recommend. And I was like, oh shit, like that's not good. Like, and I felt like if that was the energy that I was bringing to like being a parent, like that was not great. And I felt like I owed my daughter, my first unborn daughter, at least the effort to try and like fix some of my shit. So that was really what started me on the journey to counseling. And I mean, we're pretty free range parents. Like, I'm not like, we're not like physical with them. Like, my parents are physical. Like, I'm not religious in any kind of like an active way, and we're very open and communicative. And it's also like a function of the times that we live in and the place
Yeah.
that we live. But my daughters have like a very deep sense of belonging that I never had. And it doesn't sound
Right.
like you have. Like, what about your kids? Like, do you feel like your kids feel like they really belong? You have kids, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I have a 3 and a
Yeah, yeah,
5-year-old. Yeah.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
so
yeah,
they're a
yeah,
little
yeah. So,
young, but um I my mom was not like my dad. And so I have a very close relationship with my mom. So, the way my mom, well, I give you a story. Like we used to work at our factory every Saturday, every day, but on Saturdays I would go to the shop 20 minutes away from where I lived. And my mom and I would meet on Saturday morning. We'd cut tickets to do the orders for the production line for the week, and we'd, you know, many times I would show up early and work, and then my mom would get there, and I'm like, let's go eat, because Chinatown was just 2 minutes. We were right behind Chinatown in LA, and so we'd go on for years. We just cut some tickets, and then we go eat, and then come back and work some more. One morning, I get there a little bit early, get some work done, and my mom doesn't show up to like she doesn't show up to work, and I'm like, hey, where are you? You want to go get breakfast? She's like, oh my God, I forgot to tell you. Grandma asked me to take her to Orange County, which is an hour away, 45 minutes. So I'm down in Orange County. I just got here. It's an hour away. I just got here, but do you want me to turn back? I'll turn back and then we'll go eat, and then I'll turn back and drive grandma. And I was like, what the fuck? My mom just offered to turn right back. She's like, fuck her grandmother, her mom, and say, fuck you, mom. I'm going to go handle my son's business first. We're going to go eat first, and then I'll drive back. And I was like, then I knew how lucky I was at that point. And yeah, so everything that I do with my children, that's the playbook that I go, you know, if I can do it, then I will do my best to. And I don't know, I'm definitely falling short of my mom's accomplishment with that playbook, but that's my role model.
You know, it's like, you know, we don't have to, this is not a parenting podcast, and we don't have to go too deep into the weeds, but I think, you know, for me, like you know, my parents just like worked all the time. So like my brother and I just had to do everything by ourselves. And I thank my parents for that. You know, like it wasn't like a conscious thing, you know, but like my brother and I ended up being incredibly self-sufficient. And so like you know, I always joke like with my kids, I'm like, I will never do anything for you. I will help you. I will tell you about how to do it, you know, and I will show you. But like, and I think like they're, you know, it's like, it's pretty, you know, it's good. I think they're like growing up to be independent people. You know, like I read this thing in Michelle Obama's book.
Becoming?
Yeah. And she said that her mom always said to her, you know, I'm not raising children, I'm raising adults. And I was like, oh yeah, exactly. Like you're raising adults. Like, you know, the goal is not to like raise kids who are like totally infantilized and depend on you for every fucking thing, right? Like that's, to me, that's like parenting failure, right? Like like the success is like, okay, like I can, you know, kick you out of the nest and you can fly and be successful, and like don't be a dick in the world. Like really, like the bar is so low. Like just be a good person and like try to be useful. Like
you know, it's weird, the statement you just made about we don't want to go into the weeds. It is not a parenting podcast, but this is why I love doing this, because what we're talking about is really these inherent cultural sort of ideas, right? That does it exist in the white world? Will some white guy's parent turn around and do that? I don't know. You know, so talking about any aspects of our lives, you know, I think is warranted. One day I do want to, like a year from now, circle back and talk to you about some American shit, right? And but that would still be American shit from the Vietnamese lens, right?
1,000%. Yeah. So, and it goes back to like that idea of like, what does it mean to be Vietnamese to me? You know, and I think like the big piece of it is like shared trauma. And I don't mean that in like a shitty way. Like I just mean like we share a lot of trauma, like, you know, like from the Civil War and from growing up here, and like those are the things that connect us. Like those are the things that like we can always like be like, oh yeah, like this, that, and the other, you know. And it's not to be dismissive, but there's also like, they're not things that like any of us got to choose. So I think like I always feel excited by the things that like by my own agency, you know what I mean? Like that, like I feel like I got to choose like this, that, or the other, or like I'm interested in like, I don't know, like 90s hip hop. I'm like, oh shit, like you like 90s hip hop too? Like let's like nerd out about that. And I don't know. Yeah.
Speaking of which, are you a Biggie guy or a Tupac guy?
Come on, Biggie. Come on, East Coast, Beast Coast.
Crazy. Talk about societal constructs, right? Like Biggie, in my ear, it's like drinking like bitter melon juice, you know? And Tupac is like gliding on clouds for me.
Serious?
Yeah.
Really?
Biggie,
wow.
I look, I can appreciate the genius of his lyrics. I get all that. But it's just Jay-Z, Biggie, all those guys, to me, just, and I don't even come from the generation of Kendrick Lamar.
I'm sorry, this call's over now. It was really nice talking to you. I'll see you later.
You said you wanted to nerd out on
That's so good. Like, are you just like West Coast rap all the way, all the time?
Like all in, like I'm pushing all in. Tupac to me is just the god. Like there's nobody that could write like him, that could
Yeah, I
emote
don't
like him.
deny his genius. I mean, you just asked me, like, like if I just
Yeah,
had to
I know.
pick one to
I'm
go
not
to a desert
attacking you.
island. Yeah, yeah, no, 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 it's hilarious. It's just so interesting to me. Like, so it's not, I mean, like we're of the same age. So
Yeah.
it's like,
But
so
you were
like when
born
you,
there and I was born here, right? I mean, that's basically it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm just trying to think of like hip hop, like, did you listen to like Jurassic 5 at all? Like, do you
No.
like, I mean, they're from LA, no? Because they did like that, like East Coast, like boom bap stuff, I
I
guess. I
was
don't know.
not a big hip hop person. I was just
Okay.
always a huge fan of Tupac, like from
Oh,
day one.
interesting.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I still
interesting.
listen to Tupac in the gym, like all the hit 'em ups or To Live and Die in LA, like all this shit. It's just I
Yeah.
listen to that in the gym when I'm working out.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna go on Spotify and I'm gonna be like, all right, let's just listen to this. I mean, it's not like I don't like him. I just my preference is always like the East Coast New York stuff, but it's also what, and I didn't discover that until college. Like all
Mm.
through high school, I was like punk rock, punk rock, punk rock,
Wow.
punk rock. Like I was just so dogmatic about it. And then I got into college and I met these like New York City hardcore punk rock kids who also listened to hip hop. And I was like, wait, what? Like you can do that? You know what I mean? It was just like, that's so crazy. And so like, I mean, like I didn't listen to Motown. Like I didn't hear like Marvin Gaye
Wow.
until like I was in college. And I was like, what is this? This is amazing. They're like, it's Marvin Gaye. And I'm like, oh shit. You
Wow.
know what I mean? Like it was like a real education for me. Just like breaking out of like
Mhm.
all of the stereotypes that I thought I like had to conform to. I don't know. But that was
What
just
what do you listen to? What kind of music do you listen to nowadays?
oh, just like old man shit, just like just like I mean, the music is always on at the shop, and it's usually, my joke is it's like music that I can ignore because like people are getting tattooed, they're uncomfortable, or I have to super focus, so it's like not going to be like and also like like tattooing in New York, like it was just like always like a lot of like metal and like grungy hard rock, whatever, so it's pretty chill. It's like mostly like indie rock, or like instrumental indie rock. Like, I listen right now, like I'm really like on this like Khruangbin and like Tommy Guerrero kick, like they're both like instrumental, just like vibes, or like, like Jay Dilla or like RJD2, just like, break beats with no words or, yeah. Yeah. What about you? What do you listen to? I mean, obviously like when I go run, it's just like kind of like whatever I'm feeling, or podcasts.
Yeah, that's the thing. I veer away from music until like it gets cold. So when we drift into the like now October, November, when it starts to change, I listen to more music. But it's not it's old man music. It's a lot of Ennio Morricone, a lot of Yo-Yo Ma.
Nice, nice. I mean, I think like like with anything else, like I think like identity, like you define something like your identity or who you are, right? And in some ways, like you're digging this moat or you're building a wall, and in one moment you're like, oh man, this like keeps all this shit out, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait a second, this keeps everything in. Like it, and now I'm trapped by it, and
Yeah, wow.
um and I feel like that's like that with like 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 I have friends who are just like like still listening to like all the music that they listened to when they were in high school, so it's like Minor Threat or like Slayer or Agnostic Front, and I'm not, this is not me calling them out. Like to me, when I listen to that, I feel like I'm trying to like squeeze myself into like the clothes I wore
Yeah.
when I was 13. I was like, it doesn't fit. Like it just doesn't fit, and that's okay. Like I have grown as a person. Like it's shocking, I know, but like 30 years later or 35 years later, like as a 48-year-old man, like it's like I don't know, like Agnostic Front, it's fine. Like but I'll listen to Khruangbin.
See, and that's kind of like the way this is a bad analogy, but I gotta throw it out there. It's kind of like tattoos to me on my body, right? It's like
Yeah.
they're so permanent, but I kind of want to break free of it. But I know it marks a sort of time in my life.
That's why you get more tattoos. You know what I mean? Like you just are like, okay, now I got this cool shit. And don't look at the Vietnam. Don't look at that. Look at this cool shit.
I'm tempted to fly out to you and I'll
Uh,
just get a circle right here.
that's
I just
yeah,
put a
anything.
circle.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm gonna do a portrait of like Tupac on you, right? You could do Thug Life across your.
Yeah. It'll be
Uh,
easy because I don't have the six pack.
yeah, it's so funny. That's funny.
Do you ever want to spend more time in Vietnam?
I would love to go. Like it was literally, yeah, it's like it's very high on my list of places to go.
Would you ever move there?
No, I mean, I guess I don't know how I would do that. So I was like right before we moved to Maine in 2003, and I was like, "Ah, I think I really want to go to Vietnam. Like, I really, really want to go. And I like tried to convince my parents to go, and my parents were like, "Nope, fuck that place. Like, fuck Vietnam. We don't fuck with Vietnam." I mean, like you're on the losing side of like the Civil War, right? Like, and I'm sure people in older Viet people in
A
Southern
lot.
California, yeah, who were just like, nope, fuck that place. And so I just gave up trying to convince my parents. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go. Like at that point, my brother had been, he wasn't even born there. And then we had kids. And then I was like, oh, like I have like a 3-year-old. Like, I don't know how I can go with a 3-year-old. So now we're just waiting till the girls are old enough to like get shots. And right, you have to like get like shots to go there, right? Like
Yeah.
malaria and stuff like
Quarantine.
that. Yeah. So I think like once the pandemic's over, if the pandemic's over, and then once my girls are old enough to get shots, I think I'll definitely go with my wife. I mean, yeah. And
Well,
I was in China a couple years ago, and it was like amazing. And I was so close. I was like, oh my God, like I literally could just like drive across the border to Vietnam. But yeah.
Vietnam is an amazing place today. It's a
Yeah. So you go like so many times. Like, I'd love to hear what was like the first, like, when did you go, and do you go with your parents? Like all
Yeah,
that
the first
stuff.
trip was my parents, and we did the north to south trip in a van with 12 other family members.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we were eating pho on the side of the road, and then like literally the metal in the spoons were rusted, and
Oh, fuck.
you're like
Damn.
sipping broth through fucking like holes in a spoon. The pho spoons, there's
Yeah.
holes in it in the north.
Oh my God.
It was that rural and that poor.
They're like, this is also your tetanus shot, just FYI, right? Like, no, you could just get rusty nails to your foot, no problem. That's crazy. So what year was that you did the trip with your family?
I think it was 2000 or 2001, around that turn of the, yeah. I think it was year 2 Y2K, I think, because I remember it
Yeah.
being, yeah, around that time. So
Yeah.
it was trippy. It was very I ironically, I was the one who always wanted to live in Vietnam. I always wanted to live in Vietnam. So my brother at the time didn't go on the trip, and I went on the trip with my mom and dad. We went north to south. We did everything. And then a year later, my brother goes back, and then 3 years later, he moves in 2004 in February, and still there. And I'm the
That's
one
crazy.
who's not living there. And I
Wait, so your brother moved there in 2004, and he's been there ever
ever
since?
since
So what, like 17 years?
17 years,
What?
18
Did he
years,
like marry like a Viet
married a
girl and all
Vietnamese
that
girl.
stuff?
Yeah, he has an animation studio. He's an artist. He's about 150 guys working for him, doing Marvel and Disney, like roto work,
Yeah.
digital like effects. And then he
Yeah.
started a toy company, with it was 6 years ago. With he teaches at the local university, RMIT. It's a private, it's like a USC. It's
Hmm.
the kids that go there only speak English, so
Yeah.
you teach in English. So I'm like, when I think about you, I'm like, you could teach at that university and tattoo in Vietnam, because tattooing in Vietnam is huge,
Is it really? That's
huge.
so interesting.
You
Yeah. I
go,
mean, I know on Instagram I see those kids like posting, and I'm like, this is amazing work. I wonder if it's like other Viet people getting tattooed.
yeah, you go in the street, and these guys are like, they look hip. They're like, but they're Vietnamese. They're like born and raised in Vietnam, and they're all tatted up, and they're not gangsters. They're like you,
Just like
they're just
regular guys.
regular guys.
But I mean, I think again, it's like that, like we only know what we know from our parents, and it's like part of
Right.
this like very insulated sense of, right? I mean, like, it's like my parents were like, when they saw my tattoos, they're like, are you in a gang? And then the second question was like, are you gay? And I was like, damn, like way to like just put out your prejudices there, mom. She's like, are you in a gang or are you gay? And I was like, oh
Can,
God.
can I ask you what your relationship with your parents today is like?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's fine. I mean, it's functional. Like we're not like estranged. Like I don't like not talk to them. Like we have like a text thread going and all that stuff. But I see them maybe once a year, like pre-COVID, like I'd see them like once a year. But it's not like super close.
You guys don't Zoom or Facebook Messenger or anything? No.
No, no. I mean, it's just like I don't like we don't have like a ton to talk about, like they give me updates and stuff, like sort of like basic stuff, like so and so's dead or so and so's had a baby or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I think like it's like I don't know if it's a cultural gap or a language gap, but like it's like the things that are important to me to talk about, like they don't want to talk about, which is totally fine, right? Like I think like for me, like the big breakthrough in therapy was just like, I can't ask my parents to be people they can't be, right? So it's like I can either accept them for who they are and the relationship that they can give me, or I, don't. But and yeah, it's fine. Yeah. What about you? Like, what's your
Yeah,
relationship? I mean, it sounds like
my
you're still close with your mom.
yeah, my father died in 10 years to the date almost,
Oh wow.
holy shit, September 30, just tomorrow, 10 years.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it like a long illness, or was it like a sudden, like had like a widowmaker
He
heart
had
attack?
diabetes and he didn't take care of it. And, and
Yeah,
I
what
think
is
that,
that with like those Viet guys? Like they're just like, nope, like just amputate some toes or whatever. Like that's crazy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My mom and
Wait,
dad
what?
both have, yeah, I have it too. And
Oh wow.
yeah, and it's, you're funny. What's up with the Viet guys? And then it's like hard to not eat these carbs and drink the cognac, like when I'm around my people, my tribe, I love to drink, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard.
Yeah,
But so my father and I always wanted to be close to him his last 10 years, 20 years ago, I felt it slipping. He was drifting and I wanted to be closer and he wanted to just be in Vietnam all the time. And, at some point he got a little bit more sicker and he came back and spent the last 4 or 5 years at home with my mom and I. But um, I would try to ask him questions, and I was like, I don't give a fuck if you don't want to talk to me. I'm gonna talk to you. I'm gonna
Mhm.
fucking, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna break it and break the barrier here. But he wouldn't budge.
Like he was just like cone of silence. Like,
Silence, yeah.
yeah.
I was like, motherfucker, I hear the way you talk to your boys. I hear the way you talk to
Yeah.
your employees. You're like a fun dude. You're an awesome guy. Why can't you be that with? And then thank God for Jim Thompson, because Jim has told me, that's the kind of mechanics of men and their sons. So
So wait, yeah. Okay, wait. Can I? So like we're sort of dancing around this idea, like the toxic masculinity,
yes,
right, of culture. So like, yeah. So like, do you feel like it's like a different flavor of that toxic masculinity in Vietnam, or it's like compounded, or it's just like different? I mean, obviously it exists in America and it exists in Vietnam, right?
I
And
think what I went through with my father was more, it was just uncomfortable for him to be my friend.
mm,
It's just very uncomfortable. He had his older brother's middle son. They were very close and they bonded and they would hang out together and they would do things and they would be on the phone all the time. And I'm like, I can hear you. You're like in the next room and you're talking to your nephew. But I could never. So I chalk it up now to a generational sort of wall. Um,
mm,
Maybe he couldn't be a bad boy with me because he's still married to my mom, and there's this sort of wall that's put up between. I'm sure that the shenanigans that my dad and my cousin did together were, they partied and they got down, I think, in Vietnam.
mm.
And you can't share that with your son.
Well, if you come from a certain culture, so I mean, I would argue like that desire for you to have a deeper relationship with your father is like distinctly American.
Yes.
And there's no right. Um
100%.
and I think and your dad's just like he's like old school Vietnamese. He's
Yeah.
like fathers aren't friends with their sons. Like that's fucking stupid or whatever,
Gross.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. He's like, I'm not gonna throw down with this kid, right? Yeah. So I think like that, I think that's and you and I know, like as well. I mean, I'll say like I'll speak for myself, like as a parent, um, I definitely want to be like friends with my daughters when like they phase out,
Totally.
when we, you know what I mean, like and I think that's so rich, like, and I like I'm looking forward to being able to grow with, like, have my relationship with them grow, and as they get older, as opposed to like in like that very old Confucian filial piety, like lockstep, it's like a one size fits all. I'm the father, you're the kid, shut the fuck up or whatever, and it can be loving. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure that there's like a loving model out there that worked really well.
I don't see it either. I haven't seen it.
I didn't want to shit on it, but I mean, okay.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either. I don't know.
To the levels that is even just sort of acceptable. Like,
yeah. It's, to me, it just feels like a lot of like, do as I say, and it feels abusive, and it feels like it really just like opens up this like avenue for like parents being shitty to their kids, and the kids not like defending themselves or speaking up for their own humanity and all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure that there is I hope that there is a good model out there. I just have never seen it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and then what are we? We're just a bunch of flesh and bones and just programmable, malleable, gray matter. Why can't we just fucking just open up and be cool with our sons and program your fucking shit for me? That's crazy to me.
So I my therapist, I talked about this with my therapist, and he said that it was that it's really painful, right? To like, or at least I asked this very question about my dad, and my therapist was like, it's very painful for your dad to have this relationship with you that's deeper and fleshed out, because it's just like a reminder of what he didn't have with his father, right? So it's like it's so painful. It's like the third rail. He's like I don't even want to touch it. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it's not like I can ask my dad and he'll answer. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like you can't be like, hey dad, like why don't we have like a closer relationship, or why can't you talk to me about like X, Y, and Z? And
I mean, I'm probably gonna work on not being like overly forceful, being friendly with my children, my son. Dad, you creeping us out right now. Like, we don't want to be a friend. We just need a dad.
No, enjoy it. Yeah, but they really want to be. I think like it's built in. Like kids want to have a close relationship with their parents. Like I think that's like genetic. I don't think that's cultural. Like
totally.
Yeah.
It's like racism. I mean, my mind goes there, right? It's like that shit's learned.
It is. Yeah, 1,000%. So I think like in some ways like that, like there's that like bicultural experience that is net positive for our kids, right? Like they're not growing up in a household, or let me frame it in a positive way. They're growing up in an environment and in a household where like a close relationship with the parents is expected, or like that's like a goal, right? And it's not looked at as like it's on the menu. Like it's not even like, why would I ever want to be friends with my kids? It's like, no, of course you want to be friends with your kids someday.
How are they with your daughters?
Good, I think. I mean, they haven't seen them a ton, like I said, like once a year, so it's like not that much. But my girls are really sweet. But like, and I think it's really good for my daughters to see that, like, my parents didn't grow up here and like came here from another country, but they're very nice. And my brother actually left my brother's kids are the same age as my kids. My brother actually, they did like, summer camp with like, Ombanoi, and like left his kids there with my parents for a week. And my brother was like, he's like, yo, like mom and dad like spoiled the kids. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, they were great. And I was like, oh shit, like he didn't like beat them with like sticks or something. And my brother's really, he's so great in that way. Like, he just said, I think it's just like a way for my parents also grow and heal, and through their grandkids, which is awesome, right? Like, I mean, and I think like that's a trope that's true in America too, that like grandparents can sort of like undo a lot of the trauma and harm, and get a make good or a mulligan with their grandkids, for all the stuff that they fucked up with their kids.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions prepped for you, but one really important thing that I talk to a lot of people in sort of your position, whether it's academics or writers or thought people use their brain to do their work, the idea of college,
Mm.
the future of college, the future of education. As an educator, how important is it to, and I'm asking again, this is a very selfish thing because I'm trying to figure out what do I want to do? How do I want to educate my kids for the future? And how do I want to prepare them? Do I want to like, my brother talks about, and he's teaches at college and he's got a master's degree, but he's like, fuck college. That's a waste of time. It makes high school is making people dumber and all this shit. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough to make a blanket statement about that, like, and the analogy that I would use is like sort of like asking me like, what is the best chess move? And it's like, what does your board look like, right? What pieces are in play? Like, what's your goal? And so I think it's different for different kids. And actually, I was a college counselor at the high school that I worked at for 5 years. I guess like it was like I was a Latin teacher, and then side hustle, they need like a college counselor. So like I did the college game for a few years. I think it's different for different kids. I mean, obviously, like the cost piece is like bonkers, right? So I think in terms of, you think about college from like a purely pragmatic standpoint, right? Like cost benefit analysis, like is it worth the investment, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Like it depends on the kid. It depends on your resources. I think state schools are great. I also think that you know, like not to be like super vague about it, but like studies have shown that it really doesn't matter where you go to college. Like it matters what you do when you get to that college.
Yeah.
Like they do those like Fortune 500 like CEOs, and they like look at how many of those people went to like the Ivy Leagues, and it's like zero. You know what I mean? Like it's very low. Yeah, that's just like it. Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't benefits to going to like the 7 Ivy League schools that have like a 4% acceptance rate and dumb shit like that. But like, like, what I would say to like college kids when I was in college counseling is, do you think that that you get the best workout at the most expensive gym? Like and the kids would be like, no, that's stupid. Like, I'm like, well, how do you get the best workout? They're like, fucking work out hard. I'm like, exactly. And that's college. Like, do you think you're going to get the best? Yeah, it's true, right? Like, it's like you got into Harvard. Great. Like, what are you going to do at Harvard, right? Like, are you just going to like, get wasted and like fuck bitches, which is like super cool. But like, that's like a different kind of education, but I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I went to college because it was like literally like the college I went to was the school that was the cheapest for me, because I got scholarships. Like that was the only reason I went. Like it was literally only financially dictated. Like, yeah, I mean, and given the price of college now, like that's like the big question. Right?
That's
like,
crazy. It's unless you want to be a
totally
doctor, it's like it's not worth it.
Nah, kind of not. Kind of, or going to a state school, right? Like go to a state school and then like go to grad school maybe, or find your passion or find some other career otherwise. Like I'm somewhere between your brother and you. I don't know if like fuck college is like necessarily what I would say. I would always say it depends on the kid. But yeah. That was a non-answer.
No, it's a great answer. I think it's I think whenever you can answer something with more options, I think that's the right answer.
It's it's a complex, it's really complex, right? Yeah. It's not like one size fits all.
Yeah. What's next with the writing? I mean, do you have something cooking right now?
Yeah, I wanna, gosh, I'll answer this without getting myself into trouble with lawyers. So since April I've been working for HBO in the writer's room on a show. I think that's
You can
about
keep it
all
at that.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that. So we can all look forward to
maybe. I mean, like, like the show might get made, it might not get made. It's Hollywood, man. Like anything could happen. Like, if it doesn't get made, then I can probably spill all the tea about it. And then I've got taking some notes for like a novel that I would love to work on. And then, I'm in conversation with some production companies about like options for my book as a feature length film, maybe. Yeah. So like Sigh Gone, like the musical, right? It's like In the Heights, but Vietnamese. Yep.
With
Just
the
kidding.
punk soundtrack though, right?
Totally. Yeah. No, I don't know. Not just kidding. It's not going to be a musical.
No.
And then, yeah. But we'll see. I'm not good at staying in my own lane. So it's like I love doing all sorts of like weird stuff and whatever falls in my lap.
And that's probably going to be my final question for you. Like, how
For
do
sure.
you divvy up the time? Like, do you have it very clearly sort of allocated in your brain? Like, I'm doing this for 3 hours, this for 2 hours. It's all very broken down.
Yeah, like my schedule is like pretty well. I mean, especially when I was writing, like my schedule was just like so crazy. It was like I was teaching full time, like till like 3 or 4 o'clock, and then I would go and tattoo at night till like 8 or 9 o'clock, and then I would come home and like eat, like do some grading or drawing, maybe watch like an episode of The Office, and then like fall asleep, and then wake up, and then just like grind again, and then I would write every other Sunday, like all day. So like I would just 2 days a month I would like write, but it would be like a 8 to 10 hour day, and I would just like bang out like half a chapter or whatever. But in between then I would be like jotting notes down, or like I would have things planned out. But my schedule, I mean, now that I'm not teaching, my schedule is a little bit less regimented. It's actually, but yeah, I'm pretty disciplined with my time. So, and I think that's, I mean, and that comes from like seeing your parents like just like working so hard, right? You're just like that, and that's, like, is that American? Is that Vietnamese? Is that like cultural? Is that like just like a refugee thing? I don't know, but like and also like my wife is the same way though. That my wife is like from Maine. Her parents are like from rural Maine. Like her dad like comes from a family of like lumberjacks, and her mom comes from like a family of farmers. And there's like a very weird but profound connection between like my wife's family, like rural working class Mainers, and like my parents who were just Viet refugees. It's just like there's a lot of overlap there. Like they're all about the hard work, and they like really believe in like that bootstrap stuff. And they like like when my parents met my in-laws, like my like white bread Mainer in-laws, it was like game recognized game. It was so funny. It was really like, yeah, I see you, like just like mad respect. It was really cool. Yeah.
Mad respect. Well, I have so much respect for your journey and the stories that you've shared with me today, and thank you so much for opening up your heart and asking me questions. I mean, that's so enjoyable to partake in a real back and forth with you. This.
Yeah, buddy. Of course. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, thank you for being willing to answer. You're the first podcaster who was like, yeah, I guess I'll answer questions.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
And I hope that we can do this again, next year, and talk about whatever you have on the plate. And
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kenneth. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, thanks and good luck. Yeah. Good luck with your pandemic year number 2. And good luck with the podcast. Thanks for doing it. It's incredible. I love that you've created a platform to sort of like, highlight and sort of make more complex like the Vietnamese diaspora stories. I think it's super great.
Thank you. And your book was also something that really struck a chord, and of course, because we are in the same generation, but for future generations to sort of see, and our kids to kind of understand what we went through, and I really enjoyed it.
No, thanks so much. Thanks. Awesome. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, talk to you later.
All right, bye.
All right, bye. Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Phuc Tran and Javier Proenza. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts. Thanks again for listening.